We're moving toward a more scalable workforce, Caleb Thornton said, flashing a rehearsed smile as he slid a crisp manila envelope across the table. This isn't personal, just operational realignment. I didn't flinch. My name is Reid Lawson, 54 years old, senior infrastructure engineer at Horizon Ridge Properties in Seattle. I had been with them for nearly 19 years, built every layer of their IT backbone from scratch, designed redundancies, built remote access frameworks before anyone was talking about remote work, and kept them running when the power grid failed during the big storm in '09. I wasn't indispensable, but I sure as hell was consistent. Caleb, the newly minted CTO, had only been in the building for 5 months. 39 MBA from Wharton, resumed littered with buzzwords like agile disruption and cloud-first pivot. He'd never joined a systems audit, never asked how tenant data was encrypted, never stepped foot in the server room. But here he was, restructuring us toward efficiency. Diane from HR sat beside him like a statue, unreadable behind her thin-rimmed glasses. We're offering a generous severance, 8 weeks pay, and all unused vacation, she said. She looked relieved when I simply nodded and took the envelope. Any questions? Caleb asked, perhaps expecting me to fight. I just stared at him for a beat. Seems pretty straightforward, I replied. He looked disappointed. Maybe he wanted conflict, a scene, something to justify the decision. But I wasn't going to tribute him the satisfaction. I had already done the math. They had no idea what they were about to break. I cleared out my office within the hour. 19 years of work fit into a banker's box. A few notepads, framed photos of my kids, and a silver mug with Patch God engraved on it. A joke from the ops team after I debugged a corrupted failover routine during a 2 a.m. outage. I nodded to a few colleagues on the way out. Most avoided eye contact. A few gave quiet, knowing looks, the kind you give a man walking into a storm you know is coming. In the parking lot, the February rain hadn't let up. I set the box down gently in the trunk of my old Subaru and leaned against the car, watching droplets beat on the glass. My phone buzzed. A text from Mason, a junior sysadmin I'd trained and mentored. They let you go? Everyone's panicking. Nothing works. I didn't reply. That night, I sat on the back porch of my house overlooking Lake Washington. Bourbon in hand, clouds low and heavy above the water. My wife, Lena, came out and set a hand on my shoulder. What now? She asked softly. I stared out at the lake for a moment before answering. Now they find out what I was actually worth. What Caleb didn't know, what no one at Horizon Ridge had bothered to grasp, was this. The architecture wasn't just complex, it was personal. Entire swaths of it existed only in my head, built with custom scripts and fail-safes that no one ever documented. Because no one ever approved my budget for documentation, and I wasn't planning to explain it now. I first walked into Horizon Ridge Properties back when it was still called North Sound Rentals, a modest real estate firm operating out of a 2-room office above a bakery in Ballard. That was June 2004. They had 5 apartment buildings under management, a receptionist who doubled as the accountant, and a server that doubled as a glorified file cabinet. The job came through a friend of a friend. I was 30, fresh off a grueling contract in New Mexico, fixing a failed logistics backend for a shipping company that collapsed 6 months after go-live. I wasn't looking for prestige. I just wanted something stable. The owner back then, Martin Garrick, was old school, clipboard guy. But he had vision. We're going to expand, he told me over burnt coffee on my second day. And when we do, I want a system we can grow into, not out of. That was the only instruction I ever got. The rest, I figured out myself. Over the years, I built an integrated property management system from the ground up. Started with basic tenant tracking and lease documents, then added modules for maintenance requests, digital payment processing, background checks, rent delinquency alerts, contractor scheduling, and eventually, predictive analytics that help property managers forecast seasonal repair needs. All custom, all in-house, all mine. They never gave me a team, just an intern every summer and the occasional IT support guy. For hardware issues. Documentation, rejected. Budget not approved. Too expensive, we'll circle back next quarter, Martin would say. That quarter never came. Instead, I kept the knowledge in my head. Redundant layers, fallback protocols, sandbox environments, internal logic trees so complex, I sometimes had to draw them by hand just to debug a cascade error. But it worked. For almost 2 decades, it worked. Our uptime was 99.98%. We scaled to manage over 70 properties across 3 states, all running on my infrastructure. I became the guy you called at 3 a.m. when something blinked red, and I answered every time. When Martin retired in 2017, his daughter Alana Garrick sold the company to a regional investment group. The name changed, the logo changed, the priorities shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't about tenant retention or long-term efficiency. It was about margins, quarterly growth. Buzzword adoption. The new leadership wanted dashboards and visibility, so I built reporting modules. They wanted mobile integration, so I coded apps. But they also wanted to start replacing internal systems with third-party cloud tools. And they didn't want me in the room when those conversations happened. I should have seen the writing on the wall. When my quarterly performance reviews stopped referencing outcomes and started referencing team fit and alignment with strategic direction. The final clue came 4 months ago when Caleb Thornton was hired. His first email to the department: let's modernize, let's streamline, let's break legacy. He called it legacy. What I'd built, what had carried this company through market crashes, tech transitions, and disasters. He called it a liability. I watched from the sidelines as he hired 3 new engineers. Smart kids, fresh degrees, sharp resumes. He had them shadow me for knowledge transfer. I showed them everything I could in the time I had, but it was like trying to explain a jazz composition to someone who'd only ever played from sheet music. They didn't understand the rhythm, the nuance. And truthfully, I wasn't trying very hard by the end. Not out of spite, but because I already knew how this story would go. They thought I was legacy code. What they didn't realize was that I was the runtime environment. It didn't take long. 12 days after I walked out of Horizon Ridge for the last time, the first call came. I was in my garage, reorganizing boxes of old networking gear I couldn't bring myself to toss. My personal phone buzzed, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Hey Reid, it's Caleb. Hope you're doing well. We're having some minor issues with the maintenance module. Back-end timeouts, maybe something with the job queue. I know you're probably busy, but if you could spare a few minutes, we'd really appreciate your insight. I didn't call back. Later that afternoon, an email came through from Diane in HR. Subject: consulting request, urgent. Inside, a polite request to assist with some unexpected issues, paired with a generous offer: 350-hour minimum 5-hour block. I stared at it for a while, then archived it without replying. By day 3, the word urgent had disappeared. It was replaced with critical. That night, I got a text from Mason, the junior admin I'd mentored for years. Systems down hard, nothing syncing. Caleb's losing it. They tried to reboot the failover, but it looped. You okay? I typed out a response, then deleted it. By the end of the week, I was getting calls from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Former property managers, old vendors, even Alana Garrick, the previous owner's daughter. I heard something happen, she said gently. Are you all right? I told her I was. She sounded relieved, maybe more than she expected. The following Monday, I finally picked up one of Caleb's calls. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to hear the panic in his voice. Reid, thank God. Look, we've got a serious problem. The rent collection platform is misfiring. Payments are disappearing from the dashboard. Support tickets are stacking up. The dev team is completely lost. Please, just walk us through the load balancing logic. That's all we're asking. I paused. Took a breath. I'm under no obligation to help you, I said calmly. My employment ended without a transition plan. That was your call. We're willing to renegotiate, he said quickly. 500 an hour. You set the terms. Anything. But it wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about how fast they forgot. Back at home, Lena found me on the back porch again. She handed me a cup of coffee. No words exchanged. We stood quietly watching a heron skim the lake's surface. I finally spoke. They're figuring it out, I said. What you were worth. No, what happens when you throw away what works without knowing how it works? Meanwhile, news spread internally. 3 property managers reported double billing. Residents couldn't log into the portal. Vendors weren't getting their maintenance dispatches. The system I had kept alive with careful balancing was unraveling, thread by thread. Then came the most telling moment. A call from Justin Lin, the CTO of Cascade Systems, a regional competitor I'd met once at a conference in Portland. We heard you're no longer with Horizon Ridge, he said. We're expanding fast. We're looking to build a core infrastructure, real architecture, not off-the-shelf junk. Would you be open to a conversation? I agreed. Meeting was set for Thursday. Location? A quiet cafe in Fremont. No suits, no slides. just coffee and blueprints. That night, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Caleb, rain-soaked, suit wrinkled, desperation written all over his face. "Reid, we need you." I looked him in the eye, steady. "I have a meeting tomorrow." And I closed the door. No triumph, no satisfaction, just peace. Thursday morning came crisp and gray, typical of early spring in Seattle. I arrived 10 minutes early to Juniper and Pine, a quiet cafe tucked between an old bookstore and a bike shop in Fremont. The kind of place where nobody rushed and everything smelled faintly of cardamom and cedar. Justin Lin was already there, casual in a black hoodie and jeans, sipping something too green to be coffee. "Reid," he stood to shake my hand. "Thanks for meeting on short notice." "I had a window," I said, sitting across from him. He smiled. "You've probably had a lot of offers this week." "I've had a lot of silence to enjoy," I replied, and that made him laugh. Justin didn't waste time. "We're expanding rapidly. Currently managing just under 9,000 units, but we've got 2 major acquisitions pending. If we want to scale without breaking everything, we need a system, not a patchwork of tools. Not outsourced devs who treat every property like a number in a spreadsheet. We need what you built at Horizon Ridge, only better. Documented, transferable, secure." It was refreshing. Not just the clarity, but the respect. He didn't pitch me a title. He didn't pretend to understand things he didn't. He laid out his pain points, his vision, and said, "I need a builder." "What's the scope?" I asked. "Clean sheet, from back-end architecture to user interface. Full control. Your call on tools, team, cadence. We're not looking to save pennies. We're looking to do it right. What are you offering?" He slid a folded proposal across the table like a scene out of a heist movie. "Base salary, 20% higher than my last role. Signing bonus, equity, CTO level decision authority. No bureaucracy, no showboating." "Why me?" I asked finally. "There are younger engineers, cheaper ones." Justin leaned back and tilted his head. "We tried that twice. Ended up with systems that froze at 150 users, reports that lagged by 3 days, and UIs that looked like mobile games from 2010. What we need isn't flashy, it's reliable. And every reliable system I've seen in this space traces back to you." I didn't answer immediately. Part of me still felt the sting of being discarded, the ache of 19 years reduced to a severance envelope. But another part, the part that woke me at 2 a.m. during outage alerts, the part that stayed late to test new failovers, that part was ready to build again. On my terms. "I'll accept," I said, "but I have conditions." Justin raised an eyebrow. "Let's hear them." "We document everything. From day one, we build in redundancies. We train, not just deploy. We make sure if I'm hit by a bus, the system lives on. And I want full hiring rights. No compromises on quality." He grinned. "Exactly what I was hoping you'd say." That night, Lena and I stood in the kitchen while I chopped vegetables and she poured wine. "So," she asked, "how was the meeting?" "I start Monday," I said. "We're building something new." She raised her glass, to doing it right. I tapped mine gently against hers, to not being legacy. Meanwhile, the messages from Horizon Ridge kept coming. Diane had sent another urgent email. Caleb had texted again. "Again, name your price," but I didn't reply. I had a new project now. And this time, I wasn't just the guy who made it work. I was the guy setting the rules. It was the following Wednesday when Mason showed up unannounced. I just finished reviewing server specs with Cascade's infrastructure lead when he texted, "Can I drop by? Got something you need to see." 15 minutes later, he was at my front door, laptop bag slung over his shoulder, eyes darting like a man who knew he was crossing a line. We sat at the kitchen table. Lena gave us space without asking why. Mason opened his laptop, clicked through a nested folder labeled Ops Archive, and pulled up a thread of emails I hadn't seen before. "Where did these come from?" I asked, reading the subject line, "Legacy Reduction Plan, Phase 1. "They're in the system logs," Mason said. "Not easy to find, but still there. Caleb never scrubbed the audit trails." The thread was dated 2 months before my termination. Caleb, the CFO, and the managing partner from the investment group were discussing ways to optimize workforce structure and decouple strategic systems from high-cost contributors. I kept scrolling until I hit the sentence that stopped me cold. "Reid Lawson's infrastructure is unnecessarily complex by design. He's made himself indispensable, not by need but by obfuscation." My chest tightened. "He said you'd fought documentation efforts," Mason added carefully. I looked up at him. "I asked for a documentation team every year. They rejected it every time." "I know," he nodded. You CC'd me on half those requests. Another email included a timeline. My exit was marked under Q1. Phase 2 involved onboarding third-party consultants. Phase 3 projected a $1.2 million annual savings from the staff streamlining. The goal? Make Horizon Ridge look leaner for a pending acquisition. Wait, I said. Acquisition? Mason nodded again. That's the other part. I asked around. The investment group's been negotiating with Silver Grove Holdings, a private equity firm based out of Chicago. They want to fold Horizon Ridge into a real estate tech portfolio, but the deal only goes through if they can reduce key person dependency. I sat back, staring at the screen. So that was it. They didn't fire me because I failed. They fired me because I succeeded too well. My system wasn't a liability. It was a threat to their packaging plan. I'd built something no one else could touch, and that made me inconvenient. Not broken, just too tightly woven into the company's DNA for a clean sale. Mason closed the laptop. I quit yesterday. So did Terry. And Monique's interviewing at Cascade next week. Half the team is either out or actively looking. I exhaled slowly. How bad is it over there now? Bad. The vendor portal's been down for 4 days. They're manually tracking work orders in spreadsheets. Billing's off. Residents are calling corporate. And Horizon Ridge's largest client, Vantage Square Group, just issued a formal complaint. That name rang loud. Vantage represented almost 30% of Horizon's revenue. I leaned forward. Have they made a move? They're exploring other options, Mason said. Then after a pause, they're asking about you. Later that night, I opened a message from Cascade's CTO. Subject line, Vantage Square inquiry. Let's discuss tomorrow. I stared at the screen for a long moment. The system they tried to remove me from was unraveling. The clients they thought would stay loyal to the brand were already looking elsewhere. And the plan they thought would save them? It was falling apart, line by line. Some lessons can't be taught. They have to be lived. The next morning, I met with Justin and Cascade's executive team in the glass-walled conference room overlooking Lake Union. Everyone had the same expression, focused, alert, quietly electric. The kind of atmosphere that hums before a major shift. We just got off a call with Vantage Square Group, Justin said, setting his phone on the table. They're terminating their contract with Horizon Ridge effective in 60 days. The room was silent for a beat. They've asked us to prepare a proposal to assume management of all 8,700 of their units. Full data migration, end-to-end infrastructure. They want a system that works, and they want you to lead it. I didn't speak immediately, not out of hesitation, but out of gravity. This wasn't just a project, it was a defining moment. We'll need resources, I said. 3 more senior engineers, 2 more database architects, a QA lead, dedicated servers with regional redundancy, 8 weeks minimum, and that's aggressive. Justin nodded. You'll have them. I'm not doing this the Horizon way, I added. We document from day one, build in fault tolerance, no black boxes, no tribal knowledge. Understood, he said. This is your build. That night, back in my home office, I pulled out a legal pad and started sketching. Architecture layers, interface flows, escalation paths. I didn't stop for hours. When Lena came in with tea, she didn't say anything, just placed it beside me and kissed my head. She could see it, the shift, the energy, the return. By Monday, the project was greenlit. Codename Project Slate, a nod to the clean foundation we'd been given. I assembled a hand-picked team, some from Cascade, a few defectors from Horizon Ridge, and one surprising call from Monique, who I'd trained 6 years earlier and who'd left Horizon just 2 days prior. I want in, she said. I'm tired of duct tape and denial. 3 days into the build, we got word. Horizon Ridge was in full panic mode. Internal systems remained unstable. Caleb was on leave. Clients were threatening legal action over misbilling. Vendors were walking. I didn't smile when I heard it. I just kept writing specs. What Horizon never understood was that systems aren't held together by lines of code. They're held together by care, clarity, and consistency. Things they had dismissed as old-fashioned when they let me go. At Cascade, we were doing it right, and the industry was watching. 6 weeks after Vantage Square's migration was completed, I received a short email from Justin. Subject, opportunity. Body, let's talk. Something's in motion. The next day, I sat across from him in his office as he slid over a preliminary acquisition report. Cascade Systems was making an offer to acquire Horizon Ridge properties. Not for growth, not for prestige, but for the sake of stability. The deal was structured to scoop up remaining assets at a fraction of their former valuation. Horizon's backed into a corner, Justin said. Losing Vantage pushed them over the edge. Their infrastructure's collapsing, their client trust is gone, and Silver Grove pulled out of the acquisition. I nodded slowly. So why buy them at all? Because they still have valuable property contracts and their management team is crumbling. We bring them under Cascade, stabilize the operations, and fold it all into your architecture. We're not just growing, we're replacing a broken system with a better one. He looked up. But here's the catch. If we do this, we want you to lead the integration. Not just from a tech standpoint, from a people standpoint. Can you do that? I thought of the faces I'd left behind, the ones who avoided eye contact on my last day, the ones who had no say in the decisions made above them. I took a breath. I'll do it, I said, but on one condition. Justin raised an eyebrow. No one gets left behind due to cost cutting. If they're willing to work and learn, they stay. He smiled. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. The deal closed 2 months later, on a rainy Tuesday morning. I walked back through the glass doors of the building where I'd once spent most of my life. The Horizon Ridge logo was gone. In its place, a sleek black sign read, Cascade Property Systems, Northwest Division. Some faces were familiar, Mason, Monique, a few from accounting who still remembered my name. Others were new, but eyes lingered as I passed, whispers trailing behind. That's him. That's Reid. The server room hadn't changed much. Same cabinets, same blinking LEDs, same hum, but I didn't linger. We held an all-staff meeting in the main conference room. Justin introduced me as Chief Integration Officer, tasked with unifying the systems, workflows, and personnel under one reliable framework. I stepped forward. Some of you worked with me before. Some of you only know my name. But here's what you need to know. We're not going back to what was. We're building what should have been done all along. Clear systems, full documentation, real training, respect for the people who keep things running. No applause, just a quiet collective exhale. Relief, maybe even hope. Later that afternoon, I stood in the small courtyard behind the building, watching the rain dance in the reflection pool. Mason joined me with 2 coffees. Feels different, doesn't it? He said. Yeah, I replied. This time it's built to last. 3 months after the acquisition, the systems were fully merged, the chaos had settled, and for the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar. Stability with purpose. Justin called me into his office one quiet morning. The board approved your proposal, he said, sliding a simple document across the desk. You're officially launching the Cascade Technical Education Division next quarter. Budget's approved. You have full autonomy, curriculum, instructors, schedule. It's yours. I didn't say much, just nodded. This wasn't about a title or another notch in my career. This was about planting something that would outlive me. The goal was simple, to train a new generation of infrastructure engineers who understood that good systems weren't built on trends, but on discipline, clarity, and care. We weren't just teaching code, we were teaching what it meant to build responsibly. Every module, every line of documentation, every recovery plan had a reason, a purpose. It had to, because someone else's business, someone else's peace of mind was going to depend on it. One afternoon, as I cleared the last few folders from my integration office to move into the education wing, I found a photo taped behind the cabinet drawer. It was from 8 years ago. Me, Mason, Monique, and Terry crammed into a server room after a 20-hour upgrade cycle. We were exhausted, grimy, smiling like we'd just saved the world. Back then, it felt like we had. Later that evening, I stood in front of my first group of trainees. 25 engineers, some fresh out of college, some mid-career, all eager. I looked out across the room and said, you're not just here to write code. You're here to build something someone else will depend on when things go wrong. And when they do, they won't care how modern the UI is. They'll care whether it works. They listened. I could tell, because people still want to do meaningful work. They just need someone to show them how to build it with integrity. That night, driving home through the dark, tree-lined roads along Lake Washington, I thought about everything that had happened. Being pushed out, staying silent, rebuilding from scratch, watching the ones who discarded me fall into the very trap I had warned them about. But I felt no bitterness, only a quiet clarity. Some victories aren't loud. They don't come with applause or headlines. They come when you walk into a room and realize you've created something stronger than ego, bigger than revenge, and better than the system that once failed you. And if there's one lesson I've learned through all of this, it's this. Sometimes the best response to being underestimated isn't to fight back. It's to build something so enduring, so undeniable that the world has no choice but to recognize its value. That's what legacy is. Not what you leave behind, but what keeps working long after you're gone.